Okay, so I'm set up here. I got myself a little workbench, and I'm going to share with you guys today my method for changing strings on an electric guitar. So as you can see, this is a Stratocaster style guitar. Most of the methods you're going to learn today you can use on any style of electric guitar, but there are some differences, I'll warn you ahead of time, concerning the way the strings are put in through the bridge. As you know, you might have a Les Paul style or a Stratocaster style like this. You might have a Floyd Rose floating bridge. They all have slightly different techniques. This is probably one of the more common scenarios for most of you out there, this or a Les Paul style tailpiece or bridge. So let's get to it. The first thing you're going to need to do before you even start is gather a couple tools. The good news is you don't really need much. What I like to use is a string winder, which you don't need, but it does make the job go a lot quicker. And basically what this is, you can put this on the tuners and it facilitates turning the tuners. It goes a lot quicker with this. You'll also need a pair of side cutters, okay? You can get these at the hardware store, and this is for cutting the strings and trimming the ends. Now, there is an all-in-one tool that can do both of those jobs, and I've got one here just to show you. And this is a string winder, just like the one I showed you, except that, as you can see, it's got snips on the end you can use to cut your string ends or cut your strings when you're taking them off. I prefer to use the side cutters simply because I just find they're quicker, they're bigger, they're sharper. I prefer them, but by all means, if you have, you know, the chance to pick up one of these guys, it's just as useful. And of course, you're going to need a set of strings. Okay, I'm using D'Addario 9s, the super lights, on this guitar today. One thing you want to prepare for is that you don't always want to take off all of the strings at once. Okay, so before you jump right into it, generally, you know, it's good practice just to take a string off and replace it, take the next string off, replace it, and usually you stagger them. So you might say take off the 6th string, the low E string, and maybe the G string, the 3rd string, and you'll see sometimes the strings are bunched together in that way that you can put it sort of makes sense to put them on the same way you open them up. This is actually a great time to clean your guitar as well. And in fact, if you take a look at my guitar, it's quite dirty. I use this guitar a lot when I'm teaching and rehearsing, so the fretboard gets dirty really fast. So I'm actually going to do the opposite of what I just said. I'm going to take off all the strings today and clean it. Now, it's not going to really damage my neck or anything, but I don't want to make a habit of doing this, you know, every few days when I change my strings, or once a week. I don't want to take them all off and clean the neck. You'll have to just live with a little bit of dirt on your neck. I wouldn't recommend taking the strings off, personally, all the strings off, more than you know, once a month, or maybe even longer if your fretboard doesn't get too dirty. So I'm going to go ahead right now. What I'm going to do is loosen off some of the strings with my string winder. So we'll just do that quickly. In fact, we'll loosen off all of the strings, I should have said. So you can see how fast that is. You see, I haven't loosened them off all the way. That's okay. What I'm simply going to do is use these side cutters, now that they're a little loose, and I'm going to snip off these strings, all 6 of them. The reason why I didn't just go right ahead and snip them is because there's a lot of tension on there, and you don't want to cut yourself, because the ends of these strings, they are made of metal, and the ends of these strings can be very sharp. So don't just go ahead and snip them. So now that they're, you know, there's quite a bit of tension that has come off, let's go ahead and snip them one at a time. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, oops, 5 and 6. Okay, there you go. So now I'm going to just take off the strings one at a time from the neck. Being careful not to poke my eyes or poke the guitar. Some tuners, actually they lock on the bottom side. They have locking mechanisms. So if you have those, you'll have to loosen them off to get the strings out. Okay, so I've gotten the long pieces off. I'm just going to go ahead and throw those aside for now. And with this type of bridge, I'll just turn it around here for you. You'll see this little hole in the back. This little hole in the back allows me to insert the strings, or in this case, I'm just going to take the short snipped ends and I'm just going to poke them through. You see that pop out? And I can take them out one at a time. Being careful not to scuff up the paint too much. Oh, I got two that time. Okay, and I'll just put this dishcloth that I have, just so I don't have the guitar against a hard surface, the butt end of the guitar. I'll place it down, and now what I'm going to do is I've got a bowl of water, of room temperature water, and some paper towel just set aside here beneath the table. And I'm going to go ahead and clean this neck. If you have a maple neck, like this neck, or any neck that has any sort of satin or high gloss finish on it, typically you don't want to go ahead and spray on any sort of cleaners or detergents even. You also don't want to use, especially that lemon oil stuff you would use for mahogany and ebony necks. I just clean it with room temperature water. I find that's good enough. Doesn't take much more than that. So take a couple sheets of paper towel. One is going to be for drying it, one is for cleaning it. And I'm just going to go ahead and get this damp and wring it out a bit and wash this fretboard. Okay, so I've just rinsed, lightly rinsed the neck and got most of the dirt off. There's a little bit there, but that's okay. I'm not too concerned. It doesn't have to be like brand new from the factory. So now I'm just going to take the dry cloth and wipe off all the excess water. My little pretty one, my pretty one, when you're gonna... Okay, so my neck is clean. I'm happy. The next step, that while I have the strings off the guitar, I'll take advantage of this. I'm just going to use some of my spray cleaner. You see I had this set aside, and just a little chamois I got from Long & McQuaid's, and just spray down the body of the guitar now and give it a quick clean. Give me some time, Sharona. Ooh, you make my motor run, got it coming off of the line, Sharona. Never... Okay, so the guitar is more or less clean. There's a few spots, if I really want to go deep into detail, I can, you know, like you can clean out with a toothpick the edges of your volume pots and stuff, but that's something you can do without the strings on. I find around the pickups sometimes you might get a little bit, like I can see here, an eyelash or something has fallen in there. You know, just with your fingernail, without scraping the pick guard too much, you can get rid of that stuff if it's kind of jammed between the pickup and the pick guard. Now I'm ready to put my strings on. So I'm going to go ahead and open up the Diodario string pack here. You can see that they label the colors on these to the corresponding strings. So that makes it really, really easy. So you know you can take some scissors and just open these up, or use your teeth, whatever. Just rip it open. It's pretty easy to open. I just pull on it and it breaks open. Now you want to be really careful when you open up the package and unravel these strings. I'm just going to dispose of this. Unravel these strings, that you don't accidentally kink them. So be very careful when you handle these. Even the thicker strings, it can happen. I've had them kinked before, but especially the unwound, shiny steel strings. Okay, so I'm going to start with putting on the thicker of the strings. So I'm just being very careful when I unravel these, not to kink them. then it kind of just opens up. You know, you can push back a bit, and that way you don't kink the strings. Okay, so if we read our package here, it tells us that the 6th string, that's our low E string, is brass colored. And what do you know? There's our brass ball end. And that our 5th string, the A string, is red. So they put these together, strings 1 and 2, 3 and 4, and 5 and 6. And I'm going to start with putting on the brass colored string. So I'm going to set this long string down carefully, this A string, not to kink it, and always trying to keep the strings straight when you hold them. Now I need to go to the back side, the reverse side of the guitar, and you'll see that now I'm just going to do the opposite. I'm going to insert my string into the back, and it's going to come through the front of the bridge, and I'm going to pull it snug. Make sure that you take a look that you're putting the string through the right hole. So for this instance, it's going to be the top side of the guitar, away from all the electronics. So I'm just going to go ahead and insert that string. I'm going to pull it through without kinking the string. Okay, and I've made it through on the back of the guitar. There's little holes in the bridge. I've made it all the way through. Make sure that the ball end actually made its way through, and that it's not jammed somewhere in there. Then you go and tune up the guitar, and next thing you know, the string finds its way into the hole, and you have to deal with the kink string. So now I'm just going to make sure everything's snug. There we go. It's tight up against the bridge in the back there. You can see, even though I was very careful with this string, a small little kink right here. I don't know if you can see it, probably not on the camera, but you have to take my word for it. There's a small little kink. Now, it's not the end of the world, but each little kink can make a difference in the sustain and brightness of the string. So what I'm going to do now, we'll just focus in on the headstock. I'm going to show you my method for wrapping the strings around the post. There's many different methods out there. You know what, guys? I've probably tried them all. I think this is the easiest and most reliable method that I've ever used, and it's pretty simple. So I've lined up my tuning post. Now these tuning posts are kind of like the classic Strat style. They're open on the top. See, I can just place the string right in there. These days, most tuning posts, there's just a hole through the middle. What you want to do is line up the hole so that it's parallel with the string. So the string would be able to pass right through like that. Okay, so we're going to imagine that's what what your scenario is, or my scenario is rather. And what I want to do is get this in the nut, get the string tight all the way across. I'm applying pressure. And now here's the first thing that you need to remember. You take your right hand, your free hand, grab just at the first fret here, the fret wire, grab right up snug against it, and pull about a fret to a fret and a half back. I like to pull to the next dot. Or another way to do this is put your hand at the 12th fret, and it should be about a hand's width away from the... This is how much you can pull. That's how much slack there is. This method is okay to do, but the thing is, everyone has different size hands. Some of my students have hands twice the size of me, so you can imagine they're going to get more turns around the post, and it's important to get the right amount. So for me, it's just about a hand's height, or if we do that again, make sure it's tight at the saddle, about a fret wire and a half. So from about the first fret wire to just past the second fret wire. Now, that was step one. Very important to remember that. Step two, I'm going to hold my finger here, my index finger up against the post, and the rest of my fingers are holding the string. So my second, third, and fourth finger holding the string lightly. I'm not squeezing down on the string. I do not want to kink it. I want to avoid that. So I'm just very lightly, I'm just guiding the string to where it needs to go and holding it from popping out. I'm going to turn around turn the post, and what I want to do is take the part that I'm holding with my index finger, and I want this loose bit to go underneath it, okay? This is very important. So I'm just going to guide what I'm holding with my index finger. I'm going to guide it above the first winding on the post. Okay, so now it can't come underneath. You can see that. And there it is. I'm just going to straighten it out a bit. And now I've got my first wrap done. Now I'm going to do the opposite. Now I'm going to let this loose bit, I'm going to let it go above the string, part of the string I'm holding with my index finger. Okay? So there you have it. You can probably see now that it's going to grip that string. It's going to grip it tight so that it won't go out of tune. So let's just finish wrapping it, and we should get about 2 to 3 wraps around the post. Okay, I'm not going to tighten it up really tight at this point, not even to pitch, something like that. And what I'll do is I'll take this remainder of the string and I'll just make a circle and wrap the sharp side through the circle a couple times, just so it's not going to poke me like it almost just did. Poke me while I'm turning the rest of them, and next thing you know, I've got to go get a Band-Aid. These things can really poke, and they can poke your eyes, which is scary. So now if we take a look, we've got how many here? About 1, 2.5 wraps around the post. Looks good. So I'm going to go ahead and skip along. I'm not going to use the A string. I'm still going to keep that there. Let's use the G string. So according to my pack, I need to get the green string. So I have a black and green. You can see the ball ends here, black and green. I'm going to very carefully unravel these. These I have to be even more careful with, because here we have our first unwound string. That means there's no grippy part to it. It's just a plain steel string. Those ones can kink the easiest. Okay, I just let them kind of explode on their own, and I need the green string, so I'm going to place the black string down with the A string. We'll do the A string next. And I'm going to flip over my guitar, and it's going to be the 1, 2, 3rd from the bottom where the electronics are. Same step. I'm going to make sure it's tight without kinking it. Feed it to the post that I've lined up to be straight on with the string. Okay, looks good. I'm going to hold with my left hand, pinch just lightly pinch past the post. I'm going to pull about a fret. Let's try that again. I'm going to pull about a fret. Okay. Gives me about a hand space, and I'm going to hold with my pointer and lightly with my other fingers, and I'm going to start turning, and I'm going to feed the excess that comes past the post underneath. Good. And now I'm going to do the opposite and feed it above. And just whatever pitch. We're not worried about the tuning or anything now, or the tension. We're going to wrap this up. And I'm going to go ahead and complete the rest. So now I'm going to do the 5th string, the red string, if you're using the Diodario type strings. And from there we'll go to the B string, which is purple. And then we'll do the D string, which is black, and the E string, which is silver. So here we go. Let's do the A string.
Stop, give it up. Such a dirty mind, always get it up for the touch of a younger kind. My,
Okay, so we're all strung up now, and the next step, and this is an optional step, and you got to be really careful when you do this, is you can actually pre-stretch the strings a bit. So this is a good opportunity to do it right now, while the strings are, you know, loose, and you can stretch them out a bit. And all you're really doing by stretching these strings, you're doing a couple things. You're tightening up the winds at the post, and sometimes, depending on the kind of string, you might actually be tightening up the ball end a bit in its seat there. So what we're going to do is take one hand, your left hand, and just lightly create like a capo over the first or second fret, just so you don't pull up the string. I'm going to start back here and lightly tug, okay? Do not use excessive force. Really bad things could happen. Other than just breaking the string, the obvious, you could damage the nut. You could, and that's why I'm blocking over here, you could pull the nut in the wrong way, pull the string against the nut in the wrong way. Next thing you know, you've broken off a piece of your nut, and you got to replace the nut. And that's always a bummer, especially if you're behind the stage and you had a sudden string repair that needed to be done. How bad would that be if you were just going behind the stage to quickly change a string and you broke your nut? So I'm just going to lightly tug here, not too crazy hard. Okay, on all 6 strings. I can feel them getting looser. Really not tugging hard at all. Not even much harder than, you know, maybe your strongest pluck when you're playing. Okay, I'm going to just tune it up a little bit. I'm not too worried about the pitch. Okay, and I'm going to give it an even lighter tug this time. The strings will stretch out on their own. You don't have to do this. But if you got to get to work right away, you got some playing to do. You don't want your guitar going out of tune, you know, the second time you strum a chord. Especially if you're about, you know, to do some solos and bends and stuff like that. Use the tremolo bar. Okay, now I'm going to take my tuner. And we'll tune up the guitar here. Because I've only wrapped the string just a couple times around the post using this trick to create a little knot, I don't have to wrap it around 3, 4, 5 times to worry about tuning. The tuning pegs are really easy to turn. The more times you wrap the string around the peg, the harder it is to turn it. On the high strings, I don't mind getting a full 3 wraps around. I usually don't go for 4, but you know, it can happen because they have less grip, of course. Okay, so I didn't quite fuss too much about the tuning. I'm just kind of getting it close, and what I'm going to do is one more stretch. So three times I stretch these strings. Make sure your hands are clean when you do this. You don't want to get oil and dirt all over your brand new strings you just put them on. So I'm not being too fussy about the stretch either. I'm going to retune it. Hear how much we stretched it? We'll fine tune it later. Really important when you're tuning your instrument If you go too high past the pitch, drop down beneath the target pitch and tune back up to it. That way you get a nice tight snug string. Okay, so we're pretty close. So I'll take my tuner off, and the last step, and this is where you need your side cutters again. We're gonna snip off any of this excess string that we don't need. So you can, with side cutters, that's why I like to use them, you can get pretty tight because it's sort of flush on one side. So you'll see I just get in close. Be careful not to snip the parts of the string that are used past the post for playing. That could happen. You could be a lot more fussy than I am. I don't mind touching the tuning pegs. I just avoid making contact with the wood. So there you have it. We got a nice, clean, eyeball poking free area, and our guitar's in tune, and we're ready to play.